Hello everyone, sorry for the delay making my first Spider-Man build video. I personally am finding this update so fun and can't stop myself from playing. I have personally completed the raid twice now with Spidey, and while he isn't a huge damage dealer, he is still super useful to have on your team. I have a link in the description of my first raid run with Spidey you can watch below. Spider-Man for the most part is much more of a support and crowd control character. This build is heavily leaning toward the crowd control parts of his kit, making him deal some huge damage on takedowns and melee combos and having a huge amount of heroic regeneration so we can have 100% uptime on all his abilities. While this build will probably not be something you can just make right now as it has gear from the raid and OLT, it can hopefully serve as inspiration while you farm him up so you know what to look for. So, let's jump into it. For stats we are going for super high might and valor to get those damage numbers as high as possible. With just a little bit in resolve and resilience, Spider-Man can play very similar to Black Widow in that you don't want to get hit a lot due to how the intrinsic meter works. I personally get along just fine with these lower defensive stats thanks to how Spider-Man plays and the perks we are using. If you are struggling low, you can add some more defense to your own liking. Whatever works for you is fine. We have our proficiency at 68, which may seem low, but Spider-Man can get some huge crit chance perks from his abilities. With a damage buff, this is what our stats look like. We have a 65% critical chance. If we then go into Spider-Man's mastery tree, we have this perk that adds another 10% critical chance on melee attacks, so now we are at 75%. If we combine that again with critical web, we get another 15% when enemies are webbed, which they will be a huge amount of the time, taking us up to 90% critical chance. You can get this up another 5% through the mastery tree, giving us 95%. You could push this up past 100% with some perks from your actual gear, but in all honesty it's just overkill. So, you get my point. You can have some crazy high crit rate even with low proficiency. So, let's jump into my first gear piece, which is actually from the OLT. While the cryo on light combo finisher can actually be decent and apply in a single hit to a lot of enemies, the main reason I like this piece is for the brazen cosmic surge. It almost acts like a life steal ability, giving us health and heroic energy on critical hits, which as I just explained happens a whole lot, basically giving you bursts of health and heroic regen, which is also super important on Spider-Man as he heavily relies on his heroic abilities to keep enemies webbed and giving us the damage and defense buff he gets from Wrecking Ball. Next, I actually am using this piece from the raid. While I wish this has might instead of resilience, it still works fantastic with the faultless damage buff activating on our melee hits from gear in the ranged slot instead of the melee one. The sonic being on the web spread can also be fantastic for applying sonic to enemies if needed. I still need to do some more experimenting with the status leak perks to see how useful they are, but we aren't really taking advantage of it in this build. In our defense slot I am using two different options. If I want to go all out damage, I use this reactive buff emblem, which on top of having a great spread of might, valor and resolve stats, it also gives us a second way of activating our damage buff and the proximity armor perk, which can actually be useful in sections of the raid due to how close quarters everything is. I got this from a vendor but can be found anywhere. However, there is some parts and roles in the raid where staying alive is the only requirement, so for those I switched to this Jarvis barrier piece, where on top of giving us some extra resolve and resilience has the proximity armor perk again, but most importantly reactive Jarvis barrier. I know you may be wondering, why is he using reactive perks if he told us not to get hit? The reactive perks can still activate when you are using the invincibility frames in your abilities, and so still activate all the time. If you want to really see how good this piece is, go watch my raid gameplay against the final boss with this piece on and you will see I was almost unkillable. I got this from a DNA chest in the vaults. Finally, we have the Wrecking Ball Retribution Lens. I'm using this for the Might and Valor stats and the huge critical attack damage buff when the Wrecking Ball buff is active. While I would like the Berserker perk to maybe activate a defense buff or have another damage buff, the Willpower Burst works fine for now while I farm for a different one. I am pretty sure this can just drop from anywhere you can get random loot. For our ISO we have the tried and trusted Cosmic Surge artifact with Might and Valor, great stats and a great perk. Anyone familiar with the build on my channel or just Avengers in general will know how good this artifact is. I got this from DNA chests again, which seems to be dropping these like candy after the new update. We finish it off with a triple Valor artifact for some more crit damage. However, I do still swap this out sometimes with this lethal Cosmic Surge for yet another way of activating it and adding some more proficiency so we don't have to rely on our damage buff as much. For the major artifact I mainly use the Ring of Nibelung as Spiderman generates orbs like crazy, but do still swap to the Nord Stone for bosses and stuff like that. In his support tree, I do actually like to use the High Emissions perk. I feel like a lot of people are sleeping on this one, but with this perk the drone can deal some huge damage. You can see this in action from some of the clips in the intro where the drone rapid fires these huge 40 to 50,000 damage shot. Using this will up your overall damage and crowd control a whole lot. Yes, however, when damage isn't the goal and staying alive is, the medical attention skill is great for keeping you and your team healed. For the next perk, Special Delivery, which is basically just giving us a chance to drop heroic orbs on kill if the drone is on follow mode. For the web bomb I like web retraction. It can be great for grouping enemies up so you can hit them with the ultimate straight after. I'm still playing around with supercharge or extra so it's up to you. For his ultimate I like using Spider's Nest. It can deal some decent dot damage and can passively web people in the web that's left behind. We have already talked about earlier most of the good crit chance perks, but some more standouts are Webhead, giving us another way to get some heroic orbs. Spidey Defense can also be excellent for those situations where you need to stay alive. Everything else is pretty standard, offering small bonuses here and there. I hope you guys enjoyed this build breakdown. Overall, I don't really want to give too many thoughts on Spider-Man as it's still early days and this build is just after a couple of days of release. I am still learning things and improving my build day by day, so be sure to subscribe to keep up to date with any improvements or new builds. Also be sure to join my Discord linked in the description. I'm always gather teams for the raid in there and anyone is welcome. Thanks for watching.